All right, we just had some breaking news here.
Yeah, we have our Fani decision. Fani Willis, remember, of course, what was on the line was, is she going to leave? Is she going to be forced out? And they're going to have to find an entirely new situation, basically restart from scratch was what was on the line here.
Because she perjured herself.
Against, and this is, of course, in the case against Donald Trump in Georgia. And the judge, Scott McAfee, has come out in a 23-page ruling issued. He said that the defendants failed to meet their burden in proving Willis's relationship with a special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, was a conflict of interest enough to merit her removal from the case. The judge did find an appearance of impropriety and said either Willis and her office may leave the case or Wade must withdraw from the proceeding. So basically what's going to happen here is the dude's going to get fired, and she's going to be able to, keep going. This is that's
unbelievable.
It's incredible. After what they've done.
Have you ever seen a clearer case of perjury?
Everyone on earth knows she was lying. Everyone on earth knows she was lying. He was lying. Everybody knows it.
There is no justice. There really is no justice. I mean, if you want to know how African Americans felt in, the 1930s, 40s, 50s, especially in the South, here it is. Here it is. You can see it with your eyes, you hear the testimony, and you just know it's rigged. It's rigged. Because there's no way any reasonable person would come up with that. No way.
Now, what do you mean, an appearance of impropriety?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you possibly think this is just an appearance of impropriety?
How can you possibly say that?
Now, again, we talked about this at the beginning. If they had come out and said, look, Nathan Wade is just the best guy out there. Yeah, I had an affair with him. He's an incredible man. Had to have a piece. I just had to. But he's an incredible attorney, and we admit to everything, and I hired him because he's the best.
Yep.
Probably. They just skate.
Yes.
Instead, they decided to lie throughout the entire thing.
Boldly. I mean, it is not like, you can debate, well, I just made a mistake. No. They boldly took the stand, wanted to lie.
And did lie.
Over and
over again. This was
how
it was noted by the judge that this was not this situation was not proper. However, basically they're just going to make him leave.
Yes, but how does she stay? Forget the relationship. How does she stay even an attorney if she has perjured herself? This is so far beyond the relationship. I barely cared about this story when there was a relationship involved. It was like, okay, whatever. But once she started lying on the stand and he started lying on the stand, and it was proven, there is absolutely no way she should be in a position of power, and she certainly, and so should he, lose his law license. There is no law if attorneys can get away with that. None.
It's quite the statement, but it's hard to disagree with. I mean, they were overt in this, Glenn. We all know.
I know.
I mean, just looking at it from a human perspective, everyone can know they were lying. Now, did they didn't go through a perjury trial, right? They didn't go through a bar hearing where they had to fight for their license. They went through something that was supposed to, a proceeding that was supposed to rule on this case. And in this case, they're going to let her stay on. Obviously, that's going to be the choice she makes, by the way.
But how? How?
Especially
can the judge believe anything that she is presenting or saying if the judge knows she boldly, knowingly lied in 2 other cases? How?
I certainly can't believe a word she's saying. I don't know how he can.
I can't.
It is incredible, and you'd be right to look at this and say this is seemingly very unfair. I mean, I don't know how you can look at this and say anything other than they definitely want Donald Trump to get in legal trouble. There's no question about that. And if if they keep Fani Willis on the trial, there's a chance that these things can come to fruition before the election. If they throw her off, basically it's over. And they don't want that.
A new study shows that what the Supreme Court doctrine that was the old doctrine created by the Supreme Court allows 96% of private property is open now to warrantless searches. The DEA, in a completely other new story, shows that they had a surveillance program on Americans. They have collected massive amounts of telephone records for 20 years. And it was shuttered because of the Edward Snowden revelations in 2013. The Inspector General has released a report heavily redacted, and that has been released. That was released 6 years later. The Washington Examiner has just received a copy of it. The Office of Inspector General exists to provide oversight of government agencies. Among the new details of the DEA program is that it refused to comply with parts of the IG investigation for 7 months, and no one faced any consequences. Can you trust Inspector General reports anymore? Can you trust that Congress even has oversight, or even if they want to have oversight? The country has broken down, and all of the problems that are happening right now are because we've abandoned all of our principles. Does it ever feel to you? Let me take a break. Let me just take a break. I'm sorry, we didn't expect that news broke just as I was finishing that commercial.
Let me give you a quick rundown of what their argument is, or what the judge's argument is in this case, Glenn. Basically, they start off and they go through, I have the ruling here, I've been reading it as you've been talking, but they go through the idea whether she financially benefited from this first. And their argument is basically, we don't have proof of that. We don't know for sure. They essentially buy the Fani Willis argument of, number one, she already makes a bunch of money. She doesn't have like massive debts. She wasn't doing this purely for financial gain. They bought the idea that, okay, she paid for one of these trips, which it does seem like she did, one of the birthday trip that she mentioned many times. So it wasn't like, and I think I sort of agree, right? Like, I think you probably do too.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily entirely about like, oh, we hired this guy just so I could take trips. Like, I don't think that's necessarily what happened.
Right.
I think
it could have.
They were hooking up, and they wanted to take trips, and he bought a lot of the trips, and hey, it just happened to work out very well.
Right.
But I don't know that was the primary reason.
No.
It was more like she wanted the guy she was sleeping with to be close. That's a massive problem there. But let me give you this paragraph. This is after they basically say, look, there's issues here, but we can't prove that was her motivation. Without sufficient evidence that the district attorney acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, the defendant's claims of an actual conflict must be denied. This finding is by no means an indication that the court condones this tremendous lapse in judgment or the unprofessional manner of the district attorney's testimony during the evidentiary hearing. So
unprofessional?
He's admitting he knows that she was lying, basically. Right?
That's not unprofessional.
Right? It's much more than that.
It's perjury.
I would agree. I mean, that's a separate, you don't necessarily get charged with it in that way. You'd have to have a separate hearing on it. But still, it rises to that standard to me. He says, rather, it is the undersigned opinion that the Georgia law does not permit the finding of an actual conflict for simply making bad choices, even repeatedly. And it is the trial court's duty to confine itself to the relevant issues and applicable law properly brought before it. Other forms of or sources of authority, such as the General Assembly, he's giving a path here, the General Assembly, the Georgia State Ethics Commission, the State Bar of Georgia, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, or the voters of Fulton County may offer feedback for any unanswered questions that linger. This is directly from the ruling. But those are not the issues determinative of to the defendant's motions alleging an actual conflict. So he's I think you could very fairly look at this and say he's being challenged by Jesse Jackson disciple. He's terrified he's going to lose his job. You can argue that he just wants to make everybody
lose your job.
You can argue
terrified.
He would deny
lose,
it.
What a coward!
Well, he would deny that. Of course.
Terrified to lose your job. How dare you? Your job is a constitutional post. And you're terrified. You know what I'm terrified of? I'm terrified of an out-of-control government swooping in and arresting my employees or arresting me. That's what I'm afraid of, okay? Plus everything else that's going on that I'm worried about my family and my children. How dare any of you judges be afraid that you'll lose your job? Boo-hoo, cry me a river. It is our Constitution and our country that is at stake. And none of this monologue has anything to do with Donald Trump. None of it. We all know she perjured herself. I don't care about their relationship. I don't care about the money. The people of Georgia should. What I care about, more than even the case with Donald Trump, is that this woman perjured herself, and so did her boyfriend. They knowingly, gleefully, wickedly perjured themselves over and over. Neither of them should have a law license today. Neither of them.
Allegedly. So
Allegedly?
Just trying to protect you from getting sued. No, but I mean, I think there is a standard here where, like, as a person who's a normal human being looking at what they said, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know every little in and out of what they're doing here. We'll have them on to talk about it. But it's, to me, blatantly obvious. I said this 100 times. No human being in history has actually done the things they said they did. Nobody. That is outside of the cell phone data, and even where we know she was there. Like, it's so blatantly obvious to any human being.
It is the cell phone data.
Yeah,
it is that. Forget about
and they don't even
forget
seem
about
to
what your
address that
gut
in here.
says, et cetera, et cetera. It is the cell phone GPS location by triangulating the phones that they know he was, may not know that he was in bed with her, but I'm sure the CIA has some satellites that can see the heat of bodies through roofs of houses.
I mean, they can look through now and see through Wi-Fi and see who's in the room.
Exactly right. If that triangulation doesn't hold up as evidence...
To be fair, I don't think that's what he's saying. I don't think he's saying the cell phone data doesn't hold up. I think he's he's basically admitting they had this relationship and they were lying.
Yeah. So so he can allow them to go on a case when they shouldn't be, when they perjured themselves.
This is
his court as well as another courtroom.
Again, I disagree with this ruling, but what that's why I read that paragraph, because he's basically stating, I don't have the legal authority to do this on these grounds. He's saying these other institutions should be the ones doing this. They should be the ones disqualifying her. I can only act under the law that I have, at my behest right now.
What a coward.
Well, look, I tend to agree with you strongly, but that is his argument. He's saying he's limited by the law. It's not just that you can't. If there was the financial aspect, he could throw her off. He's saying, I don't have the financial aspect locked down enough, therefore I can't do it.
One is fraud. The other is perjury under oath by an officer of the court. I got news for you, gang. If this is the way you can just go to court, you think any lawyer is not going to tell murderers and everything else exactly what to say? No. Change that story a bit.
Yeah, stick to your story. I mean, this is a mafia tactic, right?
Yeah.
If the mafia were to exist, this would be one of their tactics.
And of course, they don't exist.
Don't exist.
We don't need more enemies. I love, and if they do exist, I love the mob.
But I think that is real, right? Like, why all you have to do, and they proved that they talked, coordinate your story. That's basically what occurred here. They had a very similar story, and like, again, I don't think Fani Willis was saying, "Hey, if I hire this guy, I will be able to go to Napa Valley in 6 months." I don't think that's the full motivation. But to your point, a much greater violation has occurred. Yeah. They went in front of this judge and blatantly lied, in my view, over and over and over and over and over again. And that doesn't, I mean,
I just want to say, in your view, no, let's follow the science. GPS coordination.
According to the GPS coordinates.
Yes.
And if that is not reliable technology,
science,
to your point, there are a lot of criminals out on the street later today.
Let me just say this real quick. Please, dear Jesus, come or send us an asteroid, because I can't take much more of this.